set up here. Okay, once again, I'm going to do uh, the car thing. So we're set there. All right, now, this is my second attempt at doing a live stream from mobile. We'll see how it works out. I just picked up my car, um, and I stopped here. I always stop at this parking lot on the way out to set up. So we got that done. Uh, so I'm going to try once again to do the live stream through my mobile. Now, if this thing should happen to cut out, what it'll do is it'll go into record mode where it'll record it. So if I suddenly drop out and I catch it, because the webcast I did while I was on the way to the airport today, I didn't see that it had cut out for me. I gotta check something here real quick. Oop, wrong button. Yeah, I wanna go this way. I've been trying to avoid going back through the terminal, and I keep taking the wrong turn when I'm coming out of the parking lot. Excuse me, I'm trying to rotate the camera. All right, there we go. Get it to where it's looking the right way. Now, what are we going to discuss this time? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get into something rather interesting, and that is something called SLAPP. Now, what SLAPP is a kind of a lawsuit. The acronym is Strategic Lawsuit Against Public Participation. And where this phenomenon normally occurs is with corporations that file lawsuits to keep people from writing bad things about them. It's mainly, like if you had something, now there was a coal, come on, oh, I love traffic on this road. Thank you, Mr. Cab. Well, and then this guy just said, getting out of this airport can be tough sometimes. I don't know why they designed the road like this, but they did. Anyway, sorry about that. Yeah. I'm going to have to work on this mount a little more. This is still just coordinating things. Yeah, that's about the best. Trying to get it to where you get a halfway decent picture. I was trying to hide my other telephone thing there, and that wasn't working. So it's just going to have to stay on the screen. All right, getting back to the subject at hand. Strategic lawsuit against public participation. Now, as I said, this tactic is usually used by your large corporations, mainly oil companies and like that don't like people criticizing them for what they do. So they, normally if it's a television station, newspaper, large media outlet, they will file a lawsuit to try and bully them out of writing, giving them bad press. They say, okay, you're defaming us, you're costing us money, blah, 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 blah. Now, what is interesting about SLAPP lawsuits is they have trickled down to the social media community. There is actually a growing trade of lawyers that are using this technique to shut up YouTubers, shut up bloggers, the small fry, so to speak, because they don't want people criticizing them even at the level of a blog, a YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, you name it. They don't want people trying to make them be accountable for what they say or what they do on the internet or what they say or do off the internet. And it doesn't matter. And then the next step is you have people that are starting to learn how to do this stuff pro se. They decide that they're going to be their own lawyer. An example of this is a lawsuit that's taking place in the state of Kentucky. At least it started in the state of Kentucky. It's bouncing around. I think now it's in the Carolinas someplace. And this is a convicted felon that is suing a couple of bloggers, from what I understand, because they wrote about actions that they didn't think he should be doing. Basically, he was begging for money, allegedly, and saying things about alleged things that this individual was doing. And rather than suck it up and defend himself, he went out and filed a lawsuit. And he did so as his own lawyer. And he's continuing to do so even from prison, which is a rather interesting situation. So we have, so that's kind of an interesting take on the SLAPP lawsuit dilemma. There was a SLAPP lawsuit that was done a few years back, and one of the defendants is the same person in this one particular lawsuit, where people were commenting on a blog about a high school student who was alleged to have some knowledge about a very high-profile date rape that happened. It wasn't really a date rape. It was a bunch of football players went to a party. Allegedly, they did what's known as a digital rape of a teenage girl that was at the party. And two individuals wound up convicted in that particular situation. Apparently, the person that took all the pictures of that particular incident, and the most famous picture that came out of the incident, was accused of being the mastermind of the whole thing. The owner of the blog wound up getting sued. Everybody basically settled. The blogger issued an apology, and the individual apologized for his behavior, and that was the end of it. And there was no money that changed hands, no payment of attorney fees or anything like that. It just went away. And there is talk that the North Carolina lawsuit, one of the parties, in this case being the plaintiff, has reached out to see if possibly there could be a settlement in that one. And I don't know as of yet where that's going. But this is what I find interesting about these, because these lawsuits are becoming more and more common. I know of about a dozen of them that are taking place. And I know about one of these firsthand. And they all have the same theme. The plaintiff in the lawsuit started out making comments or accusations that had to do with either a particular situation or, as it turns out, one of the defendants in the lawsuit. One or more defendants in these different lawsuits, of which, like I said, there's a dozen of them. And at least a dozen of them. I keep finding every day that I research this particular subject, I wind up finding more of these. And some of these lawsuits are downright trivial. They go from being trivial where somebody gives an opinion and they wind up getting sued because their opinion is being considered defamatory when it's nothing more than an opinion. And even though the lawsuit is likely going to be dismissed, it has to go through the system. And the poor woman that's at the center of this particular lawsuit is a part-time worker at a restaurant, and she can ill afford the filing fees and everything that's going to be involved in order to combat this lawsuit. And I have no idea where that one's going, but there's people that are trying to help her out and saying, look, this is what you need to do, and so on and so forth. So there is hope that possibly the lawsuit can get dismissed on First Amendment issues, but that's wait to be seen. And then there's several lawsuits out there that are quite serious. In one particular lawsuit, one of the individuals is accused of murder. The individual is accused of murdering a child. And the individual making this charge has claimed that the person that is being accused is not only complicit in the murder of at least one child, possibly more, but the individual has also been accused of being involved in pornography and all sorts of crimes. And when the individual tried to defend their reputation and say, no, these accusations aren't true, this didn't happen, you're making false claims, the individual got sued. Now, you might be asking, how on earth can someone trying to defend themselves be sued? Well, the fact of the matter is, you can sue anybody. It doesn't mean you're going to win or that the case is going to go through. But what it does is, to a lot of people who get notified that they're being sued, especially a federal lawsuit, which seems to be a new trick. Some of the, more often than not, a lot of these lawsuits are within the jurisdiction where one or more of the party lives. If somebody lives in California, which is where one of these lawsuits is taking place, they get sued in California, either because they live in California or one or more of the parties, that is, the plaintiff, lives in California. If, on the other hand, you live in one state and the defendant lives in another state, then, depending on the nature of the lawsuit and the way the laws work, the lawsuit is either going to be filed in the state where the person lives, the plaintiff, or it's going to be filed in the state where the defendant lives. Which, plaintiff lives in state B, or state A, and defendant lives in state B. Now there's another lawsuit that has multiple defendants. And this one's a little weird. Okay, you have a defendant that lives in state A, or no, let me back up. You have a plaintiff that lives in state A. One of the defendants, the person is suing, lives in state B. But since there is a lawyer involved, the lawsuit is being held in state C. Now, why was the lawsuit held in state C? Well, it's for whatever reason, And this is what's weird about this particular lawsuit. Another defendant in the lawsuit lives in the state of Virginia, which is state C. And the lawyer is licensed to practice in state C. The lawyer is not licensed to practice in either state A or state B. He's only licensed to practice in state C. So they somehow found this third defendant, and actually fourth or fifth defendant, because there's a whole pile of defendants in this one. The plaintiff found a lawyer in state C. State C lawyer found a defendant in state C. I think I just messed this whole hypothetical up, but anyway, lawyer, defendant, both reside state C. Lawyer licensed to practice in state C. All right, hope we got that straight. Now, I'm not a polished YouTuber, so excuse the sloppiness of this webcast. Anyway, so here we are with this rather convoluted lawsuit. Now, this is one of these lawsuits that's being brought because defendant in state B, in this case more than one defendant in state B, tried to defend their reputation because of false accusations made by the plaintiff in state A. So this particular plaintiff files all this lawsuit against all kinds of people. So what happens because of that? Well, in order for everybody to protect themselves, you can't mention this person's name anymore, and you can't talk about the false accusations the person has made. You're basically sued into silence. And this is the purpose of the SLAPP lawsuit. It's called silence through intimidation. Because what happens now is the pipeline to the truth has been cut. You know, you either risk further litigation by continuing to try and clear yourself and make the defendant accountable for their actions, or shut up until the lawsuit is resolved. Now, here's the problem. Federal docket, which is where this particular lawsuit has been filed, has a very long backup. And the plaintiffs have been told that if this case goes to trial, it could be a good 3 to 4 years that this thing goes on. Now, this means that there's expense involved because there's discovery, and there's all kinds of legal maneuvering that has to go on with everybody involved in order to prepare for this lawsuit. And this is going to run into the tens of thousands of dollars. A typical lawsuit of this nature could run well over $100,000. And that's just to fight the lawsuit. That's not counting the fact that if the defendant, or if the plaintiff prevails, then you got to figure out how you got to pay the defendant, because there's all kinds of expenses involved with that. So the beauty of this for the defendant is now he's got everybody being sued. Everybody has to shut up So the plaintiff can now say, excuse me, they can say anything they want, they can accuse anybody of anything they want, because they are now in the clear for the next 4 years minimum. And by that time, the lives of those that he's suing will be completely destroyed, because there's nothing these people can do about it. They have to live day in and day out with a pile of false narratives building up on the internet. This is why the SLAPP lawsuit is such an effective weapon. Now, this is another problem with the SLAPP lawsuit. Like I said, there's money involved. To hire and retain a lawyer for a case like this, you're starting at between $5,000 and $10,000 for a retainer. And you can check to confirm this, but lawyers get a lot of money. They get several $100s an hour to defend your case. And this is why the $5,000 and $10,000 comes in, because that's like an advance to make sure that they're going to get paid. And if their time builds up to that $10,000, they're going to come with their palm open for more of the green stuff. And this does not matter if you win or lose. And this also does not include all the fees involved. Now, if you're one of the defendants and you happen to be, say, 67, 68, 69 years old and on Social Security, you don't have the money to go out and hire a $5,000 to $10,000 lawyer. So what happens then? Well, then you have no choice but to do something called pro se, which means basically you're your own lawyer. This puts you at a distinct disadvantage if you're up against a professional lawyer, because a professional lawyer knows all the ins and outs of the law. A person that is pro se, who's never taken a law course, is on a very steep learning curve, and the odds are very much against that individual. And the defendant or the plaintiff knows this. So the plaintiff is guaranteed to win by suing the poor. And this is done quite often. Remember the restaurant worker I told you about. This is a woman that works for tips. She's in a state where the minimum wage for tips, I think, is $2 and change an hour. If she's lucky, she manages to make $50 a day in tips. She works 5 days a week. She has a child that she has to support, and she's a single parent. Now, you can imagine the burden on this poor woman when it comes to this lawsuit. Usually what happens is she'll grovel and beg, promise not to say anything more, take all the criticism of the plaintiff off the internet, whether it's justified or not, and she's silenced. And so the plaintiff wins by default. This is the goal. This is why it's called this is why these things are called SLAPP. It's a way to shut up those who disagree with you. No disagreement, no challenges, no accounting for anything that the plaintiff says, does, any accusations the plaintiff makes. There's nothing, come on, get on my way. There's nothing that can be done because the plaintiff has you by the balls. You go out there, you try and defend your reputation, you wind up getting screwed. And now what happens is dozens of other people out there. There may be 20, 30, 40, 50 people out there that have the same criticism that they want to levy against this particular plaintiff. They may have evidence to prove that the accusations they make against this particular plaintiff are true, but they're stopped in their tracks because the plaintiff has a reputation for suing people, and he knows that if he presses hard enough, the people will cave in, whether they're right, even though they may be right, and they may be justified, and they go away. And this gives power back to the plaintiff. And as more and more people get wind of this technique, those who give out these kind of false narratives seize upon this technique, and dissent is further quashed. And in effect, these evildoers, alleged evildoers now, have found a rather interesting gag order. They say, look, I can say anything I want about you. I can accuse you of anything that I want to accuse you of. I can make phone calls that damage your reputation even further. If I want, I can make blogs about you. I can make YouTubes about you. I can post things on Twitter about you. I can post things on Facebook about you. And there's not a damn thing you can do about it. If you challenge me, I'm going to sue your ass. And so everybody crawls under a rock and goes away, and this person is free to do what they will. And incrementally, free speech goes away. And unfortunately, there does not seem to be a solution to the problem. For as long as the court system is a rich man's game, justice is going to be denied to those people out there who simply do not have the means to seek out the truth and to seek out justice. So be aware, my friends, the next blogger that you criticize, the next YouTuber you criticize, the next person on Facebook that you criticize, the next person on Twitter that you criticize, even if your criticism is valid, even if your criticism is the truth, even if you have proof, you can and will be sued. And that threat of being sued is going to put you into silently saying, I know he's wrong or she's wrong. I know that he's lying. I know that she's lying, but there's not a damn thing I can do about it. I'm just going to have to sit back and watch them lie, watch them make these false accusations, watch them destroy people's lives, destroy careers. And just remain quiet. And that, my friends, is my rant for the night. Until later, this is William K. Murtaugh, aka Witness 1. I will be doing this more often, so please subscribe, leave feedback, negative or positive. I promise I won't sue you. I'm not the lowlife that goes around suing for criticism. If you make false accusations, I'm going to call you out on the false accusations, but I'm not going to sue you because I can't afford a lawyer and I can't afford to go pro se because filing fees are just as expensive. So, enjoy the internet, enjoy yourselves. Give me a like or dislike. Please subscribe. Until later, this is William K. Murtaugh saying good night. Now I got to figure out how to turn this thing on. Okay, is going on because I got to figure out how to turn this thing off. This is. Well, this is cute. There we go. Good night, everybody. Well, maybe not. Here we go.